Hello and welcome back to another video and another Instagram live talk and artist stories. I'm Tara Wahab, and today we have another dear guest, dear artist. Her name is Kathleen Ralph. She's a visual artist, and while she's going to join us, I'm just going to say a few words about Loud Art Society. Loud Art Society was founded in 2015. We've been operating about 5 years now. And our main focus is to promote health benefits of practicing any form of art and creativity. And so throughout these years that we've been operating, we have held several different public programs and events. We have received very great feedback. All right, I think our guest is here. Awesome. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm very excited to be here today.
Me too. I'm very excited to start our talk and see what you're going to do with it. Just before we start, Kathleen, in case our conversation gets a little bit longer, the Instagram Live has a time limit on it. It's only 60 minutes. If our conversation, we realize that, we still have more questions and we are still talking, I would like to ask you to stay here. Don't go anywhere. What will happen is that I will end this video and start a new one, and then you can join that one. Okay? Just in case.
No problem.
Awesome. All right, Kathleen, please just introduce yourself. Tell us where are you from and what kind of art or art activity that you've been doing so far.
So I live in Calgary, Alberta. I'm a native Albertan. I'm like fourth generation here. My great grandparents were settlers in Alberta, which is really interesting to me because a lot of my friends and a lot of my colleagues when I went to art school and stuff were students who came from other places, who they were like first generation here or their parents came here. And so it's really been a fantastic experience for me to get to know people who had a much bigger world life than I did before I sort of started to get involved with people. Yeah, I'm right now I'm doing all kinds of art, so it's really interesting that I started off as a watercolorist doing watercolor painting, and was self-taught for a long time. And then after I had kids and I was like, I really want to do something more. I went to university and learned how to do all kinds of other kinds of art. So oil painting, acrylic painting, my favorite printmaking. I took etching with Bill Lang at the University of Calgary, and it was a real eye-opening experience for me. Mm-hmm. So I have like lots of things that I do. My most recent venture has been into the world of digital art and doing illustrations, which has been just fantastic. So
awesome. That sounds like really fun. All right, Kathleen. So why and how did you start making art?
I think I'm like a lot of people who are artists. I started when I was a kid, when we called it like coloring or staying out of your mom's hair. It was, I think that we all kind of start off as artists, because we just make stuff because it's fun to make stuff. And then I kept just practicing. I would find people that were way better than I was, and I would try and figure out how they did what they did. But I also sort of refer to myself as a late bloomer because I didn't really take up doing art in a way that I thought was more professional until I was in my 40s. So, it took me quite a while to get into like the notion that my art was good enough for other people to want to have it. So that took me quite a while. But I spent a lot of time in my home by myself reading books. That's, one of the things I taught art for a little while at the university. And one of the things that I tell my students all the time is that the library is your best friend for learning how to make art. The public library system in Calgary is fantastic, and they have a huge art instruction section. And so I spent a lot of time just teaching myself how to make stuff. Just from reading books, and it's and the more you do, the better you get, right? And so you just keep keep making art. I think that my real goal when I started going to university to make art was that I wanted to make stuff that would help capture my children because they were very young when I first started university. But I also was very aware that at some point they weren't going to be young anymore. So I wanted to like make a lot of stuff that would help me remember that time in their lives.
Nice. And so I guess mainly your late blooming causes were just lack of self trust, not even confidence, just not trusting yourself.
I
Maybe.
think that's true. But I think that a lot of people who are creative don't really believe that they're good enough. Like you see other people who are better than you. Like they're not necessarily, they're different. They do things that are different. And you see people like, oh, they are super realistic. I want to be like that. But that might not be really where your talent lies, right?
Yeah.
And so you compare yourself all the time. I think people do that in all areas of our lives, right? You know, that person has a nicer house. That person has a better job. That person does this differently, and I think it just took me a long time to realize that I still had something to say that was worthwhile, and so that's really what sort of encouraged me to go ahead, is that, people would see my art and they're like, wow, that speaks to me. And I think that's more important than I like it.
Right. That they can actually connect with it.
Yeah.
But that's also happens only when you accept yourself for who you are and you just do it your way.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I remember one of the shows that I did when I was at university, a friend of one of my student colleagues said, your work makes me feel like I'm at home. And I was like, that was like the best compliment I think that I've ever had for my art, was that it's like, it just reminded them of a time in their own life, even though it was something that I was making for myself.
Right. Beautiful. So did you have any other educational background before you get into art school?
Yeah, so when I was very young, right out of high school, I attempted to get a geology degree, but geology was not for me. It was one of those things, and this is the thing that I tell young people all the time. It was a thing that was suggested by my parents. You would, it's a good job.
Yeah, it will make good money, of course.
It'll make good money. You'll be great. And I got into it, and I was like, I really just, it was so painful for me. It was, and it wasn't the geology part. Like I liked the rocks and like learning about like the history of the earth. But I didn't like the math and the chemistry and the physics that you also have to know for geology. And I realized that that's actually a big part of geology. And I was like, I don't think that this is really for me. I can't see myself doing this every day. So so I left university and went to work like in the corporate world. I worked for a long time for a pipeline company, and then I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time too. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting story. Well, I tried to get into engineering too. I took one chemistry course and that was a turning point for me. I'm like, no, I guess this is not me. I could understand everything that was happening during the lectures and tutorials, but somehow I think, I don't know how I missed all of that information. During the exams, I was not doing well at all. I'm like, where did this come from? We didn't study this.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot with students, is that they think that they know what they want to do when they come into university, and then they get into university and they're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I actually work for the university now. And I tell students all the time, like, there's no shame in changing your program and pursuing something that you're really going to enjoy. It's your life that you end up living. You have to make sure that you're doing something that you're really going to be happy with.
Exactly. And you live it only once. So
Yeah.
Don't waste it.
Exactly.
All right, Kathleen. So, since our organization is actually focusing on the health benefits of practicing any form of art and creative activities, Would you say that, or do you believe that your creative activities had any effect on your health at all?
Yeah, I think so. I think that when I was when I was at university and I was like doing a lot of artwork that sort of was like trying to um, capture that time in my children's lives that I was worried that I was going to forget. I actually, when even starting really young, one of my professors gave me a really bad time because he's like, your kids are too little for you to worry about them like moving away from home and leaving you. But it was like, it was an overwhelming thing for me that I was actually like fully aware that if I did my job really well as a parent, my kids would leave, right? And so I was, but it also was really sad for me that it was like I'm striving so hard to try and raise really good human beings that I will eventually let go. And that's a real struggle for a lot of parents, and some of them don't hit it until their kids are actually moved out. I was a little bit of, a little precocious that way, in that I was like super aware that this was a thing that was going to happen. Um, and so making that art actually helped me, like helped my mental health in that area, in just like creating things that I knew that I could hold on to, and that, that would be there. And even when I was making my thesis, I actually made art with my kids. Mm-hmm. So I was actually like having that interaction with my children in an area where I was really comfortable, and they were really happy, because kids are really happy when they're making art, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was like a really great experience for us. And another thing that happened to me when I was in university was that my uncle died, and he died in a very sudden and unexpected way, and it was really difficult for me to get through. I was really struggling with his death, and the fact that he and I had lost touch for several years. Like, we would only see each other very rarely over many years. We wouldn't see each other, and so when he had died, I realized that I had lost that opportunity to spend more time with him. And so I actually created a whole series of art about him and about what I found out about him and his childhood and his life after he passed away, when we had received all these boxes of things from his life. And it turned that really sad and really hard grief that I was feeling, and that regret, into more of a celebration. And so I think that for artists and for people who are making art, you can take those really difficult emotions and you can put them into art, and it helps you express it so that you don't have to just carry it all the time, and I think that's really important, that people find a way to deal with those really difficult and heavy emotions that you're going to run into in your life at some point.
That's true. Wow, that was very inspiring. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
We could hear about the uncle, but it was a very nice example of how you turn a negative experience into a positive experience. So
yeah, and I think that's also, it's part of my personality that I always try and find the positive. But sometimes it's a lot harder to find that, like your intentions may be good.
Yeah.
But it's difficult sometimes, right?
Yeah. And yeah, it's sometimes just getting in harmony with other people that are also going through a difficult time, but they cannot connect with your positivity. So you're trying hard, but still, like, if they cannot be on the same page with you, they don't understand your vibe.
Yeah, I think that's true. I also think that, like, if you're making art that people are going to see that talk about difficult emotions, that allows a door in for them to like talk to you about how they're feeling, or what they want to do to try and make improvements in their life.
Exactly. So how many kids do you have, Kathleen?
2. I have 2 kids. One's in university now, so she's getting ready to like hit the road. And one is still in high school. And they're great, and they're fun, and they are both very creative in their own way. Yeah, they're both, they're not the same. They, you as a parent, you're like, oh, maybe they'll be like me, but they're not.
Good. Yeah, you want them to be different.
No, and they're fantastic, right? They are fantastic humans, and they make me proud every day.
Nice, nice. That's great to hear. So, what is the theme of your artworks? Yeah, I guess you did just briefly mention that you did some work with your children, but your own, do you have like your own personal theme that you always go back to it and you work? And how many pieces have you made? Do you count your pieces?
I don't count my pieces. I have so many. I for a while before I actually went to university and at the beginning of university, I actually did a project that was mail art, where people would email me and they would send me their address and I would make a postcard, paint a postcard for them, and I would mail it to them. And I made almost 100 of those. So I mean, if you're just thinking about just like a body of work, I had so many things that I've like sent to other people and sent away. But the theme, I think, a theme that I return to often is just connecting. I think that we live in a world where real connection is difficult, right? We have a lot of ways that we can like touch base with people. We have social media where things are fleeting and they're temporary, but like true connection is really hard. We live right now in a very superficial world. And so it is a theme that I go back to often, is just connecting, and connection. And sometimes it's literal and sometimes it's more less literal. But it is a thing that I think about a lot, is how we value our connections with other people and how important it is for us to maintain those. And I think even now, especially in this COVID world where we can't be together with people, it's even more important that we try and find ways to connect.
So true. So that's really interesting about the postcard project that you mentioned. Where were the destinations?
Oh, they were everywhere. I sent postcards, mostly North American, because that's where I am. But I did send postcards to China, to Iceland, to all over Europe and Australia. I sent one to Russia. And I always want and sometimes people would let me know that they got them, and they would send me a picture of like what it looked like when they received it, because of course going through the mail, things don't always turn out the way that you want them to. But but they went everywhere, and it was really fun, because it was fun that because people I get a whole bunch from one area, right? Because I would look at the map and see where they were, and so obviously somebody would get their postcard and they would say, "Hey, look what I got. You should do this too." And then I would get more requests, and it was always free. So you would just ask for a postcard, and and I would pay for the postage, and off it would go, right?
Nice.
And so, and it was a very fun project, because it really encouraged me to make a lot of different kinds of art. And it was a small format, right? 6x4. There's not a lot of time commitment to making a 6x4 piece of art as opposed to like something really big, right? So.
And it's nice. It keeps you remain creative. Just even if it's a small piece, it still keeps you engaged with your creative activity, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Great. That's a very unique project. Now I'm thinking of doing something similar.
So there's a guy in Calgary, and I don't actually know what his real name is, but his artist name was Chuck Stake, and he was a big mail art person, and he would mail all kinds of stuff to people. I saw him at a talk at what was then ACAD, the Alberta College of Art and Design. Now it's the Alberta University of the Arts. He gave a talk there one Saturday, and I went to go see it. And I was super inspired by his talk about mail art and the history of mail art. It was a really big thing apparently in the 70s. And I was like, I'm going to try that. Why not? That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it sounds fun, and it's unique. Great. All right, let me ask you my next question. Would you like to collaborate with other artists?
Yes. I collaborated with my kids, and that was kind of fun, because when they were in, I want to say grade 6 and grade 8, they actually got credit for the show that I did at the Nickel Arts Museum. So they were like listed as artists. which was like, so now they are like, you know, when I was, you know, when I was in grade 6, I had a show at the Nickel. So, but I actually am interested in collaborating, and I've looked at like talked to a few people about collaboration, but it's never really come together for a collaboration. One thing that I am working on that's a collaboration that's not strictly just an art collaboration, but I'm working with a writer in Calgary whose name is Heather Clitheroe, and we're working on a graphic story that's called Sister Martin of the Stars, which is about nuns in space. And so I think, which I think like it's a little dark. It sounds more lighthearted than it really is. It's a little dark, but it's
I
but
hope so.
but it's fun, and it's fun to work with somebody who has like she has the inspiration of the story, and she sends me the story and about how she sort of envisions it, and then I work on illustrating it and making it. So I'm hoping that for next year for Comic Expo, I will have an actual comic that I could, you know, bring to the show. So
Looking forward to it.
yeah,
None.
nuns in space. That's
Are they going to be preaching there or what?
no, no.
Okay.
Bad things happen. It's not. Yeah.
So, Kathleen, what is your perspective on art and creativity in general?
Um, you know, I think I was actually talking to somebody earlier this year about like what art is, and you know, really art is really just like anything that you do that's creative. You know, like I think that there's this notion. I have a very democratic notion about what art is. And it's pretty much, you know, like people are like, well, scrapbooking isn't really art, or this isn't really art, or this other thing that you're doing isn't really art. And I'm like, if you are creative about it and you're making it your own thing, it's totally art. And and I think that the more creative that we are as people, the better we tackle big problems that are in the world. The world needs more creative thinkers. You know, I think I work for the Faculty of Science at the University of Calgary, and I am really pleasantly surprised at how many of the professors and people who work at the university are also engaged in the arts, either as people who like to view art and collect art, or as people who make art. And they do go hand in hand. Like we think of them as separate things. Science and art are different. But I think in order to be a really good scientist, you have to be creative, right? You have to be able to think about things creative. If you're going to discover something new, you have to have thought about how you're going to figure that out, or you have to be curious. And curiosity and art and science all go together. And I think it's really important that we foster creativity, especially in young people. I think in the digital world that we live in, it's really easy just to consume.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? And I think it's really important that we also create. And so I really do encourage young people to be creative and try and make things themselves, because that's really a lot of learning comes from making mistakes, and you make a lot of mistakes when you're trying to be creative before you get to something that you really like, right?
It's true, yeah. Every mistake is another step towards the victory. So
exactly, yeah.
you have to try it. How else would you know? And you're right. Like that's the whole talk about thinking outside of the box, you know. And scientists should have that open mind if they want to tackle like bigger questions and problems. But I really hope and wish that, you know, the educational system would put a little bit more encouragement on the creativity side. I still think that we have a long way to go to get to that point.
I agree. But I am really encouraged by sort of the shift from STEM, which is, you know, to STEAM, which includes art, right? So there is like a push now that's like including art in the sort of like science sort of, you know, science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, right? And now they're adding the A in there for STEAM, because they are seeing, like a lot of educational scholars are seeing the real benefits of how art enhances science and scientific thinking.
Right. That's true, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I see you have some very beautiful works behind you in the background. Would you like to show us some of them?
Oh, sure. So
Yeah,
that there
nice.
is that's an etching that I did. It's called The Hair. Above that, that's one of my connection pieces. It was one piece. I did a whole bunch of work that was just hands
Mm-hmm.
um, that my children posed for, and that was really great because they helped me with my thesis work. But it was all about like how we touch and how we interact with each other with our hands. And then right behind me here is a watercolor on Yupo.
Nice.
That's Nautilus, and
Beautiful.
that's a really big piece. It was one of the biggest pieces that I've done in watercolor, and it's like awkward. It's
What, what are the dimensions on that?
it's like it's no, 16 by 22. So for a
Okay.
watercolor piece, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Usually they're much smaller size, like on
yeah,
the table.
yeah, exactly. So you can just like hold in your hand, right? It's like no, like
Did you do any paintings at all too, Kathleen, or no?
so the hands one, those are oil painting.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I've done a lot. I've done a lot of yeah, I did a lot of acrylic painting. I don't have any acrylic paintings that are in the house right now, but I've done a lot of acrylic painting as well. I did find that acrylic painting was a really good starter to look at doing oil painting, it's really forgiving. So I really enjoy doing acrylic painting. It's like if I'm experimenting and trying to figure out what I want to do, acrylic is the first thing to go to because you can always cover it up and figure it out. Oil is less forgiving than that.
You have to wait until it dries and you can go over it and fix whatever. But
Yeah.
you know, I find the probably the most difficult one is watercolor because it's not forgiving at all. Like if
No.
you make a mistake, that's it. Start
Yeah,
again.
and that was the first medium that I started to use. So I started off hard. Uh, uh,
You took the
I started,
challenge.
yeah, pick the hardest one and go with that one because then everything else is easy after that. No, I think, but it's also if you are making art in a home with children, it's like less toxic. It doesn't have fumes and stuff like that. It's easier to clean up if you have a spill or whatever. Um, so for me, it sort of made sense to go that way, but it is hard to do because once you make a mistake, that's it. You can't cover it up. It's not forgiving that way. But it did set me up really nicely for when I started doing etching and printmaking because that is also not very forgiving.
Yeah.
And it works the same way. Like you work from light to dark when you're doing printmaking, and same way that you do when you're making watercolor. So it wasn't a big leap for me mentally to try and do that. So yeah, that was. But watercolor also kind of messed me up for other things like acrylic. You know, you're sort of used to like thinning things out and painting really thin and building layers, and acrylic can be much more like just like slap that on and get it going, you know.
Yeah.
So it took a little time to rethink how that was all going to work.
That's really interesting. Did you try any sculpting as well, or no, not at all?
I did some sculpting when I was in art school, but it really wasn't for me. Like, I don't know why. I had a really hard time getting what I wanted in my head into like a 3D form. Yeah, I had more difficulty with that for sure. I really admire people who are sculptors and can make like a like a three-dimensional object, like a real thing that you can hold in your hand, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I really like it too. But it's, of course, it's more difficult. It takes more space and probably it's sometimes even more expensive to actually make sculptures
Hmm.
rather than 2D works. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was going through all my work because right now I'm selling a bunch of art because I need to reshingle my roof and that's expensive. But I was going through all my work and I was like, I have like 7 portfolios just filled with like works on paper. And I was like, if I was a sculptor, that would not be. I'd have to have a whole other building with, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, but I'm running out of space, literally. This, on the background here, I have like a bunch of stuff all around me, but I guess that's the life of an artist. It's okay.
Do you find also that you just like collect weird stuff that you might want to use in your art someday?
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? I try to every year to go through them and just do another check and see, like, just ask myself, do I really want this, or am I having any, but if I still feel like I really enjoy just feeling this object or this material, I think one day I will use it, I will still keep it. So yeah, I have a bunch of stuff that have been sitting there for years. And I still, every year that I check on them, I feel like, yeah, maybe I will use it. So, and I think the only sad part is that sometimes I'm also collecting lots of art material that I don't use them on time, and then they, just dry out or expire, and then I have to just throw them out. That's
I know
sad.
that is the worst thing. I was it was funny. I was helping my mom move some stuff out of her basement, and she gave me a box that had oil paints and stuff that my grandmother used.
Mhm.
And I was looking through. I'm like, wow, some of this stuff is actually still like it's still soft and pliable. I wonder if I could actually paint with it or not. And then I'm like, I really don't need to keep more things. Like I
Yeah.
already have an entire room in my basement that's just full of stuff of like art supply and things like that. I'm like, I do not need more.
And a box of antique oil paint.
I don't need a box of antique oil paints. No. I already have like new oil paints that I could use. I don't need the geriatric ones, you know.
It just doesn't work. So what are you working on right now, Kathleen?
So right now I'm actually returning to that series of that I've been working on with the hands. And I want to because of the pandemic, I am actually looking at doing a series where people are like interacting with each other. So not just hands, but also maybe faces, a little bit more portraiture kind of work. Um, so I'm looking forward to like continuing on with that. I just picked up a bunch of canvases, so I'm getting ready to like to get moving on those. I have a commission that I need to finish first before I do that, but I'm really looking forward to getting back to the series of work that I was really enjoying doing, a few years ago. So it's one of those
The,
things where you never really let it go, right? It's like you can just keep. I want to make more things. I want to do more of those things. Yeah.
so the series is also around the connection theme again, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Great. So, and you mentioned something about commissions. Are you getting commissions in the kind of like around the same theme that you work, or like whatever that people ask you to do?
So the commission I'm working on right now is really fun. I'm doing a commission for a person that's setting up an escape room that is Star Wars themed. So I'm actually working on paintings that are connected to Star Wars, which is great because I love Star Wars and I love pop culture stuff. So I'm actually, yeah, so that's actually what I'm working on right now is a painting of a Jedi. So that's and that's great because, people are paying me to paint stuff and I'm always happy to do it. And it's even more fun when you're painting something that you like.
Yeah.
Commissions can be really tricky because sometimes you get a topic or a subject that you're not super passionate about, and that makes the painting a little bit more difficult. It's
Yeah.
always more fun to paint stuff that for commission of something that like you'd like, right? Or that you're really interested in. So.
Right. So true. All right. So, um, what would be your recommendations for the people that who are interested to start making art, but they haven't started yet?
I think you should just start. I think I do though recommend like go to the library and look at the art instruction books that are there and find one that has art in it that you like, that you want to learn how to make, and start with that. And or if you have inherited art materials or you have art materials that you want to use that are a specific type, like acrylics or pastels or watercolor, go look at those types of books and find something. And that's a really great way to get started. I certainly for a few years, I taught art in schools, in elementary schools in Calgary. I was like an artist in residence, a guest artist, and I would come in. And I would really, like, I would take the kids down to the library and I'd be like, okay, so let's see what you've got in here that could be like an art instruction book. And we would talk about like, take these books out and take them home and like practice and try and make the paintings or try and make the piece of art that's in that book that you really like. Um, and don't worry about copying stuff when you're first starting out. I think that people have this thing that it's like, I can't copy because that's cheating.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's like, even like the great old masters, would copy other great painters. And they would even say, so and so after this painter, so and so after Michelangelo, so and so after Da Vinci, because that's how you learn, right? Is you copy, and that's super important as part of like developing your skills.
Exactly.
You can't. It's difficult to sell, but it is good for learning for sure. And I think that you look at what other people are making that is so great that really inspires you, and you should totally go for that and try and like figure out how they made that, so that when you start making your own original art that comes from your own head, you have the skills that will help you create that thing.
Exactly. And you know what, as you mentioned, it's hard to sell. Maybe it's hard to sell here, but I'm pretty sure if you're in another area of the world, people are still buying and selling just copies, and they still think this is original work of art. This is art. They call it art.
Yeah.
And yeah. It's just so much more different here in North America. So
well, and because I think in North America, we live in a very owner-based society. Like, well, that's somebody else's thing, so you can't do that, right? But I know that in lots of other cultures, it's quite common to be like, this person made this thing, I'm going to make something just like it because I love it so much, and so I want to make that, for sure. And I think that's a really great tool to start developing your own voice and your own style for how you want to paint.
Yeah, and you know what, they are still do that with admiration, not just like because they want to steal the idea. They just admiring that work of art so much, or the artist so much, that they are, it's an honor to actually do this after them, or like copying them after them and learning from them. But because it's such a great work of art, it still sells. So
yeah. Which is awesome, because I think, more people need to buy more art. That's really
Yeah, that's something that we don't actually talk much during these talks, because I think there is this division between the people who believe art should not be bought or sold, like the money should not be connected so much with the actual original work of art, or where the art is coming from actually. And there's another division that people believe that, well, no, I have to be able to create a body of work that actually sells, and not just work in terms of visual art and pieces like this, just like even a piece of music, even a dance work, even a book that an author or writer has written. And so I think that's important that we do mention these things. And personally, my belief is that whatever that you do with passion, and if you really truly enjoy it and you keep working, consistently, it will eventually get you to making money and, like living off of it too. But you have to remain focused on it.
Yeah, and I think it's also important for people to think about like art and artists as it's a career.
Yes,
right?
And professional career,
and,
not just
right?
the game, or because I think sometimes most people don't even take art as serious. They just think that, oh, art is just something fun that you're doing, or it's just craft. But like even that has required me to do schooling, that has required me to spend a lot of money on a school, and my entire life that I have spent on it. How come is that it's valueless? Like it's worthless. And to other people who go and study geology, they have to have a good career.
Yeah.
Artists,
no. We expect to pay plumbers and and engineers and lawyers, but for some reason, like, art should just be out there for us to consume and enjoy without compensating the person that created it, right? And I think that is really detrimental to having people make art. There's definitely two sides of it. Like at some point, you if you're a serious artist, you want to spend all your time making art, right?
Yeah.
But it's really hard to spend all your time making art if
When you don't have,
when you don't have any means of support, right? And so it's really, that was a big thing that about, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, there was a hashtag on social media that was like support living artists, right? That there's a lot of talk about like classical artists and the old masters and all that kind of stuff, and all the money that was being spent on these found Rembrandts that were oh, there's a Rembrandt that's coming up for auction, millions of dollars, right? And it would be like, there's a guy just living down the street from you who's making fantastic art, who would sell it to you for like a couple $100, and you'd have this amazing original work of art as well. And that living artists do deserve to like make a certain amount of money. I know it's set, and for some people, it's like the talk of money is kind of crass when you're talking about art, but it's like it's living too. People need to make a living. There's in North America especially, there are not very many artists who can just be artists.
True.
They need some kind of a side gig or another job to support themselves, and it really does make it difficult to devote yourself to art if you have to have like a 9-to-5 job as well.
That's true. Yeah. And like those people who are spending like those big monies on works of art of classical painters or artists, they look at it as an investment. Probably it's not a good very investment to buy the work of art of that artist down the street for $200. So you see, they just look at it from a wrong perspective to begin with, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. I think the people that I would hope would buy my art would be people who buy it because they love it and because it speaks to them, not because they think that someday I'm going to die and they'll make a lot of money reselling it.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's what I'm hoping to.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, my next question to you, Kathleen, is that who were you most inspired by for yourself or your art?
When I was younger, I was really taken by really popular artists like Robert Bateman, like people who are realists and stuff like that. But then as I got older and was like learning more about Canadian artists and because I don't think that we talk a lot about really great Canadian artists in Canada very much. I think lots of other countries celebrate their artists a lot more than we do. I mean, we do talk about like the Group of Seven and Emily Carr because they seem to be the only artists that people know. Yeah, exactly. They're legendary. But there are so many great artists in Canada and living artists right now. So one artist who's inspiring me a lot right now is an artist from Canmore whose name is Janice Tanton. And she has a real connection to the First Nations communities in Alberta. And she does beautiful artwork about colonialism and how the white settlers interact with First Nations people, and it's beautiful, and it's and some of it is sad, and some of it is a little like it makes you really think, but it's all like executed so beautifully, and they are really so well done. And so I always find that like when I'm searching for like inspiration on and keeping going, I actually follow her social media and I look at her works in progress. I'm like, oh yeah, that's actually a great idea. I should like. She always shows like her underpaintings, like for her oil work, like she always shows the underpaintings that she does. And I'm like, I need to start remembering that I need to do better underpaintings for my artwork because it always makes for a better painting when you're done. And so for me, it's like I just want to start painting. But she has this very like disciplined practice that I respect. But she also makes such beautiful artwork that's super inspiring. And I really like, I think that more people really should see her artwork. And she is connected to the Banff Center and she does lots of really great work. But her work is huge, like it's epic sized. Like she is, she really impresses me right now. So right now she's really the one that I've been like really thinking about a lot. And I also watch a lot of like East Coast artists. Because that's a really different world for me. Like Canada's a huge country. So like you think about like when you look at artists on the East Coast, they have much different inspiration than prairie people like us. So I really enjoy like like keeping my eye on Canadian artists. And I really like looking at contemporary artists who are alive right now. You know, it's really impressive. Like there's a lot of people who went to school. A lot of people don't know that you and I went to school together. School aged me much more than it aged you. But
I have lots of white and silver hair.
but there's a lot of our classmates, you included, who are like doing some really amazing work. And I'm really super pleased. Like I look at like Katie Green, who's doing all those great public artworks right now in Calgary. And it's like I was with her in school. Like I know her, and that is really kind of awesome too, as somebody who's like having connections in with artists who are doing really, really well. You know, like she's definitely making a mark for herself, and it's fun to see her out there, you know, doing great work. You know, and I really love to see like people that have been connected to our art school that we went to, and seeing some of the great ways that they've grown in their art practice as well. You know, it's like, oh, you know, I thought you were so awesome back in school, and now you're even better. You're doing so much more great work.
Yeah, persistence, I guess, remaining focused and just keep making more art. And if it is truly your career, you're just going to work on it. And hopefully, if the community and everyone who's surrounding you is going to be supportive of that work and your activities too, and make it easier for you to keep working on it, because it's not that easy to just remaining an artist.
It really requires a lot of discipline and a lot of positive thinking.
Yes, a lot of positive thinking for sure. Nice. So, and for yourself, do you have any inspiration in your life?
I'm going through a lot of big changes in my life right now. So I'm really focused on like optimism and hope, and those are definitely things that I think about a lot, as trying to remain optimistic. I'm sort of relentlessly optimistic, somebody described me as. So I'm thinking of like the kind of art, trying to make the kind of art that makes people feel hope or feel optimism. We are kind of living in a dark time right now. You know, there's a lot of injustice in the world. There's a lot of people who are facing a lot of hardships. You know, there's a lot of people who are out of work, certainly where we live, and all over the world because of the pandemic. You know, it's hard to maintain your optimism. But I keep, you know, that's definitely what I'm looking at, is trying to find a way to reach out and find ways to be hopeful.
That's really important. Yeah, and mental health was an issue before, and now it's even worse with what is happening and what is going on. And I think many of us artists should actually be very, very actively working right now to help it. Yeah. We'll see how much support we can get to do that work.
That's right.
All right, Kathleen. So my next question to you is, if you could change anything about yourself, what would you change?
I don't know. You know, I've always been the person that does not have a lot of regrets about things. Like every step that I took in my life led me to where I am now, and I'm very happy to be where I am now. You know, I have great kids, I have a great community, I have great friends and great contacts, and I have developed respect in my work and in my practice. So I don't have a lot of regrets. I think what I would do is I would have started sooner. If I could change anything, I would have, instead of taking geology, I would have taken art. And I would have started sooner.
That's a great one. Yeah. All right. So my next question is a little bit, from the fantasy world, and just having a, fun conversation here. If you could have a superpower, what would that be?
That is interesting, because that's a question actually that I ask people all the time. Like, what would your superpower be?
Oh, great.
But I think that I already possess superpowers, and I think everybody possesses superpowers. And I think my superpowers are kindness and optimism. I think that one of the greatest superpowers that we have is kindness. I think that I keep sort of pointing out to the greater world. But you know, it's really we live in a world where a lot of people laugh at people who have difficulties, who have made a mistake, who have had some kind of an accident, who are, you know, have something that they can't control about their life, and that becomes a bit of a joke for people. But I think that kindness is really, really important, and kindness, being kind, results in people being kind to you, and that's a really great thing. You know, I'm always looking for ways to try and make other people's lives a little bit easier, or a moment a little bit easier. And so I think, you know, kindness is a superpower that everybody has and that everybody can use. And it makes a huge difference. You know, you can just think about the last week and somebody who was kind to you, and somebody who said something nice to you, or somebody who supported you, and how that made you feel, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to do. It takes almost zero effort to be kind. You know, all you have to do is just be yourself and be a nice person. You know, do something nice for somebody else, you know, or just say.
Oh, your voice cut off. Just say something that's where your voice stopped.
Oh, sorry. So I'm not sure where I ended up. Where I ended up losing you. So.
Yeah, your voice stopped where you said just say something.
Yeah, just say something kind to somebody. You know, you can. It's an easy thing to do. Just, you know, support somebody in something that they're doing. Or one of the things that I found, since we've been working from home and I have not been seeing my coworkers very often, is even just like sending a little note asking people how they are. Like, how are you doing? Like, I really want to know how you're doing. And we've had some very honest conversations about how difficult it is, being isolated right now. But the reply almost always is, you know, thank you for asking. Like, it was so great to have somebody ask about how I am, right?
Yeah.
So.
It always makes you feel like you're not alone, and there are other people who care, and you don't have to just lie about it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think we do, like, we get used to this. Oh, I'm fine. Everything's good.
Yeah.
How are
Yeah.
you? You know, but asking for like a legitimate, how are you? Like, I want to know how you really are, is really important. And those honest answers and conversations, they'll not only they build a relationship, which is important, but you develop that trust, right? And you get a deeper connection with somebody, which goes back to my themes of like, you know, connection is really important. As people, we need more connection.
True, yeah. And I think sometimes just having a smile on your face is all that matters, you know. Just having a welcoming face.
Yeah.
It already makes a difference than just, you know, sitting there and not wanting to even make any eye contact with people. So that's important.
Exactly.
Wow, that was beautiful, Kathleen. All right, I guess my last question to you is actually how our viewers can reach out to you, and if you have a website, if you have any social media pages, how they can connect with you or see your works.
I have all the things. I have social media, so I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. I have an art page on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have a website, KathleenRalph.com. I have a webcomic, hopethecomic.com, which is about to relaunch. So it's been dormant for about a year. And because there's a lot of changes going on in my life, I've been thinking about how I want to relaunch that comic. So there's that as well. So yes, you can reach me all the ways. You just, you know, Kathleen Ralph, and search me up, and I'm in all the things. So I'm always happy to hear from people. So if they want to reach out and see me, if they want to go and look at my web pages, that's wonderful. Most of my most recent art always ends up on Instagram. So if people are looking for like what I'm doing, and then they also get to participate in my 5 daily gratitudes, which is something that I do every day as part of my you know, looking for optimism. And I would love it if people started to participate in that with me. Like, I know on Facebook, when I post my 5 daily gratitudes, oftentimes I will have friends who are on Facebook who reply with their gratitudes for the day, which always just totally makes my day and makes me super happy. So that's another way that you can connect with me, is to participate in that project. So.
Yeah, I've been following that project for years now, and it's great to see that you are very consistent with it. You still keep going, and every day there is 5 daily gratitudes. That's great.
And it's not huge things. That's the fun thing about the 5 daily gratitudes, is that I think of small things in my life that I'm grateful for. It doesn't have to be like money or, you know what I mean? Like big things like that. Oftentimes it's just like, it's just small things that just like, oh yeah, this is a good thing that I have in my life, and recognizing that not everybody has the privileges that we have. So, some days I'm just grateful to have like machines that wash my stuff. I don't have to wash all my stuff myself. I have machines that can do it for me, but I'm also grateful for the people in my life, and I'm grateful for you for inviting me to share this time with you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. It was a great talk. I'm really glad that you were able to join me and having this live. And I hope that other people will watch. And thanks to everyone who came and watched us, our viewers. I know some people popped in and popped out, but that's okay. Thank you very much for your support and always being there for us. I guess that's all, Kathleen. If you have any last words, please go ahead and say, and we can just end our conversation.
Well, I think that I'm super appreciative for the opportunity to talk with you. I've always appreciated you and the work that you've been doing, and I really want to encourage you to keep going and keep doing all the wonderful things that you're doing, because you are amazing. And I also, and also for viewers out there, people who are watching this, if you are interested in making something, in making art and being creative, I certainly encourage that. And reach out to me if you have questions about how to get started or what you want to do. I think I'm probably a teacher at heart. I love just like helping people out and doing stuff. So I definitely encourage that connection.
Nice. I think you should become a Louder Society member, because you know what Loud is standing for? It stands for Let Optimism Unleash Dreams.
There you go. We're in the same emotional boat.
Yeah. Maybe we should start some sort of collaboration in the near future.
I would love that. That would be fantastic.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Kathleen. It was very lovely to have you. I will post a photo of your artwork, and we'll direct people to come and visit your pages, your social media pages on your website. And we will have another live on Sunday. I still don't know the name of the person. They haven't told me yet, but it will be probably in Persian. Since the Persian community has been very supportive of our organization, we have dedicated an entire department to the Persian culture.
That's fantastic.
Community. So we, if you go through our page here, even on Instagram, you will see that some of the content is in Persian, and we try to keep everything in both languages. So people who are watching or following us from Persian communities, or even, Persian-speaking countries like Afghanistan and Tajikistan and those kind of countries, they're also following us and seeing all this content that we are sharing. And we would love to connect with all creative professionals. Also, you, Kathleen, if you know any other artists who would be interested to participate in this project with artists sharing their stories, please do introduce them to us, or introduce them to, or us to them, or them to us. And we would love to hear their stories.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right. Well, you have a great day, Kathleen, and thanks to everyone who watched us. See you again next time. Bye.
Bye.